Welcome to Down in the Bumps, a perinatal mental health podcast that shares stories of women and families who have experienced perinatal mental health problems. My name is Laura. I'm your host and I'm a doctor training in psychiatry. At the end of each episode, I'll share some learning about perinatal mental health related to the story we've heard. Please note that what is discussed in the podcast should not be taken as medical advice, and you should discuss your own medical care with your GP. This time I'm speaking with Gemma, who's married to Ben. Gemma talks about developing severe depression during her pregnancy with her youngest, Olivia. She shares her story of recovery and thanks those that helped her along the way. There is mention of suicide, so if this may be triggering for you, perhaps step away and join us another time. I found Gemma's story absorbing and inspiring, and I hope you do too. And listen out for baby Olivia's cameo appearance towards the end. So Gemma, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you about your story. Can you tell me a bit about yourself and about your family?
Yeah, so there's me and my husband, and I've got 4 children now. Supposed to be 3, but we had our surprise for last year.
Mm-hmm. So it was a surprise, number 4. How did you find out that you were pregnant, and how did you feel about that pregnancy when you found out?
Yeah, so like I say, surprise. So at 3 we were done, and Ben was booked in for vasectomy at the end of March 2020, but we went into lockdown. And then in July 2020, I had symptoms of an ectopic because I'd had an ectopic previously. So I went to A&E thinking it was an ectopic pregnancy. They did an internal scan, checked my blood counts and things. It was quite scary because we were right in the midst of COVID, right at the beginning of it. So I wasn't allowed anyone with me. I was very much on my own. And they took me into an office and sat me down and said, it is a viable pregnancy. So what's your choice? Would you like to go ahead with the pregnancy, or would you like a termination? Because we understand it's a shock. And at that time, we'd obviously agreed that we were done. So it was very difficult because I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't really know what to do. I just went home to speak with my husband about it. And when we spoke about it, I think we both sort of said, well, it's not what we wanted. And then I just sort of ignored it because I was too scared to go up to the hospital because of COVID. We were isolating because my son was on like the high tier of illness. So I was scared of him getting ill if I was going to hospital. There was quite a few different factors that stopped me wanting to be at the hospital. So I just ignored it. I don't know what I thought would happen, but just sort of put it out of my head and just pretended that it wasn't happening. And then I had an email off Ward 1 saying it's got to the point where it should be booked in with the midwife, so they'd pass it over to the midwife.
Yeah. Is this your scan, Gemma?
Yeah, so it would have been like a 10-week scan. The midwife phoned me, did my booking in, and it was a midwife that I'd had with my previous younger 2. So I knew her quite well, she knew me, and I sort of laughed it off and hid how I truly felt, I guess, on the phone with her. And then buried my head again, and no one sort of reached out after that. So I found it quite easy to push aside and get on with day-to-day life. I was really ill, but even that, I just sort of swept aside to, I've been sick and that's it, and just keep heading forward.
Yeah. So did you sort of, was it that you tried, you weren't really connecting being sick with being pregnant, and you're trying to put a division between those two things?
Yeah. So I guess I was just sort of saying to myself, oh, I've been sick, that's it. And I wasn't connecting a pregnancy in any form. I was sort of, any signs of pregnancy, like being tired and things, I'd just be like, oh, I've overdone it today, but I wouldn't say it's down to pregnancy. We didn't share that I was pregnant with anyone apart from my husband's mum. So it wasn't like acknowledged. We didn't tell the kids. There was just nothing to sort of indicate that I was pregnant.
And then what happened next as time went on?
So that was sort of how it was right up until about 22 weeks. And all of a sudden, a lot happened within them couple of weeks. Of there was a house move. My children moved to school. My eldest daughter, she was going through quite a lot emotionally, and it just felt really overwhelming. And then I started having visual defects, and I was quite worried about it. I was going dizzy.
Right.
And again, I think I wasn't relating it to the pregnancy, so I went to A&E, and they did an MRI scan, and it came back that I had Sahari malformation of the brain. But again, because we were still just coming out of COVID, conversations were really rushed and quite short. So I didn't understand what that meant and how that was going to impact me. And I remember them just saying, we just need to keep the baby safe, and that's it. And it's not going to affect the baby's health, so it's okay, you can go home. And in my head, I was at that point now thinking, I'm not bothered about the baby. I want to know if I'm okay and what's going on with me. And the medication that you can have if it's bad enough for your vision, I wouldn't have been able to have because of me being pregnant. I started to feel a bit resentful then, because I felt like I was ill and I was really struggling, but no one could help me because they were keeping this baby inside me as a priority over me. I came home from hospital. I felt like shutters just started coming down on every avenue of people I had to talk to or get support from. Like I say, I hadn't told anyone I was pregnant, and I still hadn't. So I was limited to who I could have conversations with. And then my midwife phoned me, Rosie, and she said, I've noticed that you haven't been in for your appointments, but I've seen that you've been in with this. Are you okay? And so I've reached out and asked how I was doing. And again, I just put a mask on. I was like, yeah, and I laughed it off. And she asked if I could go in and see her. I said, yeah, and I booked in that appointment. And then I think it was just like a train that had no way of stopping, and it was just building up a momentum as the night went on. And then my husband was taking the kids to school in the morning, and I just couldn't shift that feeling of loneliness. And sort of, I'm in a place where I don't want to be, and I'm not enjoying anything. I'm not enjoying the kids that I'm with. I'm not enjoying getting up in the morning. I'm not enjoying going to sleep at night. And I was just tired. I just remember feeling so tired and worn out, not just physically, but mentally, and just thinking, I just can't go any further with not just a pregnancy, but with everything, because I was just so tired.
Yeah, so it felt at that moment, everything felt really overwhelming. You know, there's a lot, as you said, a lot going on in your life. You've got this diagnosis, which it sounds like wasn't properly explained to you. You're starting to feel a little bit resentful then of the pregnancy, and it was really good of your midwife to reach out, wasn't it? I wonder, Gemma, if it felt a bit like you felt forced to make that appointment, and it felt like making it reality when before maybe you're trying to deny it a little bit, and that was maybe quite difficult as well.
Yeah, I think so, yeah, because I remember thinking, like, the dread of when I go to the appointment, she'll probably do a scan. And it was just the dread of seeing at that point this thing inside of me that felt quite alien. I think because I just so totally disconnected from it, that it felt like all the focus of everyone and my body was about this baby, but my mind was about me and keeping me safe, and I wasn't okay, but I felt like I was screaming and no one was hearing me about that.
Yeah.
And that it was just all, you're okay, it's about the baby, is the baby okay? And that was quite difficult, and I think that's why I found it sort of really daunting about appointments and things, because I was scared that if I didn't say the right things of, yeah, everything's fine, the baby's fine, you know, and put that mask on, then what would the effects be on my other children? What would this bring in, like social services and different things? That played a lot into it, because I thought, if I tell people how I truly am feeling, my kids have got to be taken away in ways, and then don't tell anyone how I'm feeling, then I'm causing upset in ways, because I'm not enjoying, I'm not being happy, and I'm not sort of engaging with the family like I would normally. So it's like a catch-22. I'm not going to win either way.
Right, okay. So there's all these feelings all these thoughts going around in your head. And then you mentioned that Ben had gone out. What happened that day?
Yeah, so Ben went out with the kids, and I felt like I'd just done everything normal, and sent them out the door, give them a kiss, said I love them. Ben was going to drop the kids off and go shopping, do the food shop. And I just felt like everything just went dark. It just felt like there was one way, and that was the only way. I just sort of went to into this mindset of my family would be sad, but then the only way for them to ever sort of start being happy again and being back to how we were before all of this is if I'm not here. And that's when I made the choice to sort of try and end my life. Yeah, and that's where it directed me. And then Ben had picked up something wasn't right, so he didn't go shopping. He sort of flew home, and he came in and he found me and phoned an ambulance. At this point, I was 28 weeks pregnant. When I was on A&E, a doctor came down and he said, what a stupid thing to do when you're pregnant. There was no sort of empathy, or he made me feel really ashamed.
Yeah, when actually you're really ill, you just want help really, and you feel quite judged then.
Yeah. And I just thought to myself, this isn't the outcome I wanted. I didn't want to have to explain or sort of justify myself with where I'm at and what I'm feeling.
So Gemma, after you were discharged from hospital, you were referred to the perinatal mental health team. And how did they support you to get better really and to bond with your baby and with each other as a couple?
Yeah, so I had Helen come out and she did like an official assessment, and she over the week gave us like homework. It wasn't sort of forced on us. It was just little things of tasks that we could try that might help. I think the first one was pretty much give the baby a name and start using the name around the house. So you sort of getting used to it being not just a baby but a person. And then for me and Ben on bonding, she said about playing board games and things of a night time, but after a bath, Ben putting like oils on my stomach and rubbing them in and talking about the baby and talking about things that we might need to do or get in place or buy or order, and the baby's name and what we think that baby might be like. And this was done over quite a few weeks leading up to the baby being born. But I think that made a massive difference. I know that Ben definitely built a relationship up with the baby quite quickly, actually, doing that.
You mentioned Helen. What was Helen's role?
So Helen was my mental health nurse, care coordinator. So she planned out the routes that we were going to take and took things very step by step, explained things quite in depth to me about what the processes are and what's going to happen. And then she would bring in different people from the perinatal team. So I got introduced while I was still pregnant to the mother and baby unit, just in case I did need to go. And then she also brought in Melly, occupational therapist, to sort of help try and break down my day and bring a bit of normality back to realistic expectations in the house, because I felt like I was never doing enough. So I was overexerting myself trying to do everything, and it was just too much. So Helen's just sort of brought in people as I've needed them and sort of got outside help local to me as well. One of the most important ones was the school, which we went into lockdown again in January of 2021. So Helen reached out to my children's school and explained what was going on and got the kids into key worker school just a few mornings just to sort of ease the pressure.
How did the school react when Helen approached them, and how were they with you?
Yeah, so the school had actually phoned me a few days before just to explain about homeschooling and how I was getting on. And I just, again, put a mask on. I was like, yeah, we've had a new baby, so everything's a little bit, but we're trying to get done what we can. And then Helen phoned them a few days later and explained, and the school got back in contact with me and were so lovely. And they said that it's the first time they've sort of come across any mums being under mental health, and it opened their eyes a little bit. So if there was anything that could help, they were there. They offered the kids to go into key worker school, like I said, but they also offered to come and pick the kids up and drop them off to save me going out because my anxieties were quite high. They've been a massive support, and I don't think I would have recovered as well as I have without that support with the children and school and feeling so open with the school.
Oh, that's brilliant, and I'm glad that you had that support from them as well, because I suppose as they reflected, they hadn't had much experience with mums with mental health problems, had they? So that's really good. So we've sort of talked a little bit about how things were after Olivia arrived. How was your mental health during the latter stages of your pregnancy and just after Olivia arrived?
So as I got closer to the end of my pregnancy, it got a lot tougher because I was feeling a lot more movement. I was having a lot more scans just to try and build a bond, and I found it quite hard. I'd put on a face, and then I made myself really poorly with anxiety, and I had sickness and diarrhea, hot sweats. I was really poorly for about a week, and Helen had come to see me, and she phoned the maternity unit and asked me to get checked. And I remember going on and them saying it's food poisoning, or you've just got a bug, and they did all the tests, and I remember telling them it isn't, I'm okay, and they did all the tests and it came back that it wasn't any of that. I was really poorly, I was really dehydrated, so they kept me in. There's no wards, it's all separate rooms, so you're in a room on your own. There wasn't anyone sort of coming in and out. I wasn't allowed any visitors because of COVID, so I worked down into a bad place again. And Dr. Busby phoned me, and I remember explaining to her that I felt myself going back down.
Is Dr. Busby a perinatal psychiatrist?
Yeah, she is, sorry, yeah. So she phoned the ward, spoke to the ward about my mental health. And I remember another thing that I was struggling with was having so many different midwives coming in and out the room. And I felt like I had to sort of explain myself and justify why I was feeling this way and really go into depth with them, and I found that really difficult. I felt really judged and ashamed, and I think it was like on my last day I got myself really upset, and one of my friends phoned the ward, and the ward coordinator came in, Katie, and I remember at first feeling a little bit sort of scared and worried about, it's like the head teacher coming to see you and ask why you've been like complaining, I guess. But after a bit of like talking, she must have stayed with me for about 2 hours, and we went through everything, and she went and spoke with the consultant and came in and sort of relayed the plan of action that baby wasn't going to be born. I was planned for a section, and I'd had hormones to show that early labour could be happening, but it's not guaranteed.
Right.
That they would be happy for me to go home, and if anything else changed, me to come back. She said to me then that she was happy for me to, if I ever need to ring and speak with the ward, to ask for her. So it's just one person that I'm going through.
Yeah.
I just remember it just feeling so at peace and comforted of if I do need to reach out to them because I'm not well, then I can. There's that friendly face at the end of the phone that understands, that knows, and I don't need to explain constantly to different people. And then she told me that she had booked to work while I was having my section. For the time period that I'll be in, she'll be on the ward, so I would just have her with me, which was lovely. And so she got permission off the hospital, I think, that Ben could stay with me in my room while I had Olivia after Olivia had been born, because at that point partners weren't allowed. They were there for the birth and then they had to go. That takes me to my section, and we went in, and I was really anxious, and then just before I was meant to go in, the anaesthetist came in and said to me that he'd been made aware about my mental health, but then asked if I was going to get abusive or violent while I was in surgery, which was quite a shock and quite difficult. I felt like everyone had this persona of who I was and what my mental health was, but it was a totally wrong perception of my mental health and what type of person I was. And I sort of said to him, absolutely the opposite. I'll just cry if anything. Told Katie what had happened, and I remember her saying, he asked me that, and I told him. So she said she was got to have a word with them and sort of correct that going forward.
It sort of it reflects perceptions, doesn't it, of people with mental health problems, that people can think, oh, violent, but actually you were just really vulnerable in that situation and you just needed caring for, didn't you? You weren't going to be a threat to anybody.
I was just scared, absolutely petrified. I just needed some comfort from somewhere.
Would you like to talk about Olivia's birth and how that was?
Yeah. So initially in surgery, my blood pressure was really low. I think I've gone into all of my sections and thought, they were okay. And there's a list of things that had never happened to me. And I think I hit everything on that list on Olivia's surgery. So because I was sort of falling asleep and a little bit in and out, Ben sat next to me with her for a little bit, and then he got taken out with Olivia. And when I went into recovery, Ben sort of sat next to me, but I just couldn't bring myself to look at her and hold her yet. I was finding it quite difficult. So Ben just kept on sort of prompting me. I remember him saying to me, "She grows on you so fast." And I could just tell by the way he was talking and stuff, he was so smitten and in love with himself. I was scared of if I did sort of engage and I didn't feel that, that's going to hurt him. So I found it really hard. And when we went off recovery into our little room, Katie came in, and I remember her saying to me, "Gemma, you can hate the pregnancy and everything about it, but it doesn't mean you hate the baby. They're two separate things." And that sort of opened me up to sort of having a look. And I remember Ben walked over because I said that I'd see her now, and I was in bed with the pumps on my legs and things, so I couldn't move. And he just sort of put a pillow there and put her on my legs. I sort of in a way forced me to have a touch, a feel, and a look at the same time. And I guess it wasn't like that initial look and falling in love. It was just, this isn't too bad. This isn't awful. I'm not looking at her and hating her. I'm not looking and thinking, I still don't want you. It was just a look of, it wasn't anything negative. It was something positive, but it wasn't the initial feeling that I'd had with my previous of connection and sort of knowing her. It was a gradual getting to know her over the period of, I think it was 4 days we were in for. And Katie came in and helped me attempt to breastfeed that later on that night before she went home. And that was so nice and special. And the staff were all so supportive throughout the night and the days in between Katie of helping me with that skin to skin and breastfeeding and, you know, just talking about how I really was feeling rather than trying to put on a front. So Helen came to discharge me from hospital home, and a plan of action got put in place that I'd have a point of contact every day from either the midwives to Helen or someone on the perinatal team and the health visitor for 2 weeks. And I still have that piece of paper now of, it was just a little bit overwhelming at the time. It's sort of nice to look back and think, oh yeah, that person came and I remember that. It's quite wholesome to sort of look at. But when I came home, I felt like Helen sort of, like you bundle your baby to bring them home. I felt like Helen and the perinatal team sort of bundled me up in a load of cotton wool to bring me home, to say, you're going to be home and it's going to be okay and you're going to be sort of kept safe and sort of dealt with very gently. I feel like I was treated like a newborn myself. Everyone was so gentle and caring and sort of making sure that I was okay, as well as Olivia, but primarily me. Then giving me that boost to sort of give what I had left to Olivia and build that bond. And it did, and it helped massively. And over them first 2 months, I'd say, it grew very fast, that bond with me and Olivia, to the point of I was worried that So if anything would happen to her, I just sort of wanted to protect her as much as I could. And I think that was a lot of guilt about what had happened and stuff started to eat me up.
And then I think there were discussions about inviting you to go into the mother and baby unit. And what kind of things were you needing to weigh up when you were trying to decide whether or not to take up that offer?
Yeah, so I got offered to go to the mother and baby unit a few times between Olivia being born and a couple of months old. Like I say, mine and Olivia's bond was there, but the other things of guilt about what had happened and what I'd put my family through was then sort of weighing on my shoulders. And a lot of trauma from my childhood came up all of a sudden, like Pandora's box had been opened. But I was just so scared to leave my other children to go into the mother and baby unit because it's nearly 3 hours away from where I live. And I was thinking, they'll think I've had Olivia and then I've up and left them. My comfort is my husband and my kids. So for me, I was worried that it would make me worse rather than better because of how far away it is. And also, my house is very much my safe zone. So to me, I would get better quicker being at home than I would be in a mother and baby unit.
Did you take up that offer then to go to the mother and baby unit in the end?
Yeah, so it got to March. So like I say, it was a good few months after Olivia had been born, and I got to March and I was really overwhelmed at home. Like I say, a lot of childhood trauma had come up, but my mum had also tried to make contact at my home, which I haven't had contact with for about 4.5 years. So it was a massive trigger, and that safety and comfort of home wasn't there. It'd been invaded. So Helen offered to go to the mother and baby unit again, and I took that offer because I think when I come home from having Olivia, because the bond came and everything else, I felt like it sort of rocketed in my progress of getting better, and then it sort of levelled out and planed out a little bit. So I felt like I wasn't making progress, and then when that hit, I felt like I'd just fallen back to where I was. So I wanted that not intense, but a little bit more regular help to try and sort of progress me forward a bit quicker again. And it being further away was something that sort of appealed to me then, because it was just going to be like a little bit of a break away from all the pressures of home.
And how did you find the admission?
So I arrived quite late, and because of COVID, Ben had to sort of drop me off outside, and my anxiety sort of flagged up. It was somewhere I didn't know, people I didn't know. I wasn't sure how much they knew about me. I was introduced to like the nursery nurse and the staff, and they were all really lovely and welcoming. And then I didn't really sleep because it's somewhere you don't know, and I don't think you sleep in always when you're somewhere new.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what to expect. So I was sort of had all my guards up, and I was very much in threat. And that made me go back to how I was when I was pregnant with Olivia, and I got really bad sickness and diarrhea again. And my husband came down the next day to visit, and I said to him, I really don't want to stay. It's making me worse rather than better. I just felt like they were a million miles away, my family, and that's what I needed around me at that point. I think also because I was in somewhere I didn't know, I was panicking, thinking, I don't know where the shops are, I don't want to stand and cook because I don't know what to cook. And I think it just sort of triggered a lot of panics inside that I didn't voice at the time.
There were parts of the admission that felt like they were positive. There were parts that felt more difficult. Were you then discharged from the mother and baby unit, or did you decide to stay?
So they let Ben stay the night at the mother and baby unit because they took into account how late it was and how far he had to travel, but also how anxious I was. And then in the morning, they asked if I could have home leave, so I could go home, but I'd have to come back on Monday morning and then discuss my options then, which was granted. So I was able to come home and spend the day and night at home, which was a lot better. Anxieties came right down, and I went back on Monday and I sat with one of the psychiatrists and spoke with her about how I was feeling and the difference when I got home to how I was while I was there. And it was agreed that it probably is better that I was at home for the treatment that I needed at that point. I got Emma on outreach coming back out to me for a bit of a longer period of time, which was really nice to have that support at home.
Hello, Olivia. So my next question was going to be, how are you and Olivia and the rest of the family doing now? I can see that Olivia seems like a very happy little baby.
Yeah, she is. Oh, do you know what? She was the missing piece. We needed you, didn't we? She sort of like, it's hard to say because we felt like we were done, but she definitely was the missing piece, and it feels like she's just glued us all together. She's just so happy and confident. And you know what you want. You're very headstrong, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know what you want. No. Looking back to where I was when I sort of met the perinatal team, I don't recognise me, or I feel like I'm looking at someone else and what they've been through. I don't recognise or remember them feelings, and feels very strange to think that that's how I was and how I felt and how poorly I was. It's total polar opposite now. I do have bad days. I do have down days that I feel like this is really tough, but I feel like I've got like a survival guide in my head of all these people that have been in and out and helped and give me little quotes or little tips or little bits of advice. And I just have it all in like a scrapbook in my head, and on them days I just sort of pick out whatever's needed. And I think it's just so important to just be kind to yourself first, and just give yourself what you need.
I guess that sort of leads on to my next question. Is there anything that you'd like to say, Gemma, to mothers or families that are struggling with mental health problems?
Yeah, it feels like it's going to take a long time, and that's going to take forever, and it's going to feel hard, but that time goes by in a blink of an eye. It really does. I think it's very important one for me is me being poorly hasn't affected my kids in a negative light. Me being poorly has shown them that it's okay to struggle, because there's people there that will help and you will get better. So I always sort of tend to say to my kids, if you're feeling sad, that's okay. Or if you're feeling angry, that's okay. You're allowed to feel like that, but let's work on it. Rather than don't talk about it, because I think that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything you'd like healthcare professionals to know?
Yeah, that all mental health is different. Like with me, I was treated in so many different ways by different people, and I think it's so important that they sort of acknowledge what mental health is it, and go and sort of research that before they talk to the mother, so they're aware of what it is and how it affects them. And I'm just thinking about the anaesthetist here, to be honest. I'm just thinking about like you should have sort of looked into what mental health is and how it affects people, rather than just its violence.
It's going in with no sort of preconceived ideas and just being curious and understanding, isn't it, really, and empathic?
Yeah, definitely. Just being open to everyone's story. I think you really don't know what people are going through, and you don't know what's led them to certain situations. And I think just being open-minded, be a little bit more open to what's led people to certain situations and why they feel like that.
So Gemma, thank you so much for talking to me today. Your story is so absorbing. I've learned so much from you, and it's just such joy to see you and Olivia doing so well. To see you together is so lovely. So well done on how far you've come, and
thank you.
It's it's fantastic to see.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I just hope that it helps some other mum either speak up about how they're really feeling, or to let them know that there is light at the end of that tunnel.
Now it's time for the medical bit. I may use terms that are more familiar to healthcare professionals. And just a reminder, the content of this episode should not be taken as medical advice, and you should discuss your own health with your GP or your mental health team. This time I'm going to talk about postnatal depression. Postnatal depression affects around 1 in 10 women. Women may experience symptoms including feeling low in mood, not getting enjoyment from things they used to enjoy, feeling very tired, feeling hopeless or guilty, feeling very anxious, or having thoughts to end their lives. Postnatal depression may affect how mothers feel about their babies. They might not feel that they love their baby, or might not feel a bond with the baby, and might struggle to figure out what their baby needs. They might feel very guilty about how they feel. Sometimes women might have thoughts to hurt their baby, which are distressing. It's important that women are supported to talk about these thoughts so that they can access help to get better. Postnatal depression usually starts within a couple of months after having a baby. 1/3 of women who have depression after the birth of their baby also had depression during their pregnancy, like Gemma. It's normal to feel tearful, low in mood, irritable or anxious in the days after the baby arrives. That's known as baby blues. If this goes on for more than 2 weeks though, it's important that women speak to their GP or health visitor or midwife who can assess for postnatal depression. Most women will recover from postnatal depression within 3 to 6 months without treatment, though treatment reduces the duration of illness. Treatment depends on the severity of depression and may include self-help, talking therapies, antidepressants, and activities to help women feel connected to their babies. For more information about depression during pregnancy and after birth, you can go to Tommy's website or the website of the Association for Postnatal Illness, and there's also BUMPS, which stands for Best Use of Medicines in Pregnancy, and that website provides evidence-based information about the use of medicines in pregnancy in the form of patient information leaflets. Thank you so much for listening.